Hey everybody, it's Wednesday. It is Marissa Alexander, and this is Thinking Out Loud. Guess what? You're a whip. A whip is a work in progress. We all are. So hopefully you made some progress today. And if you went back, don't worry. My motto is you probably made 4 steps forward yesterday. So how y'all doing? We are literally going to be talking about having those difficult conversations because listen, we're not going to be able to avoid them. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think that one of the things that I'm noticing just from talking to peers and other people, there's a lot of, conversations that need to be had. And so they're not being had and people are being passive aggressive or they have these little microaggressions. And so what I'm going to do is just talk about real quick and dirty 4 steps that I think through when and if I need to have a difficult conversation. So hopefully you will buy into this. I know that it could be a lot more comprehensive than what I'm going to do, but I think what works best for me when going through these steps is really having a small, intimate group and doing role play that can be helpful. So, what conversation are you avoiding, and who are you avoiding it with? We cannot avoid conflict. It is a necessary part of life, and conflict reframed can really be seen as an opportunity. So tell me about a conflict that you're avoiding and do me a favor, share this with somebody who's probably told you about a conflict or a conversation they need to have and they hadn't had it yet. Or, just share because that's what you want to do. We all need to just figure this out together. Now, I personally think that the conversations that we have, the steps can be the same in work environments, in some ways the same in like personal relationships. I just find that personal relationships tend to have a little bit more investment and less boundaries. And what I mean by that is at work, depending on, if you're an employer or an employee, there's a lot of rules in place from an HR perspective and other things that we may hold back in how we engage in the conversation that we need to have, a difficult conversation. But if it's personal, family, intimate partner or something like that, we tend to have a little less boundary because we feel safe. I believe it can work in either way. It's just that the dynamics are just a little bit different. So we're going to talk about it. So let me share this with you. Did you know that 70% of people are avoiding having conversations that are difficult right now? 70% of people are doing that. Stats show that 1 in 4 persons is currently avoiding a conversation, a difficult conversation, and they have avoided that for at least 6 months. 1 in 10 persons have avoided that difficult conversation that they know they need to have with someone for at least 6 months to a year. And then 1 in 10 persons is actually avoiding a conversation and being in the environment where they're avoiding the conversation. They are uncomfortable and it's awkward. And they've been doing this for at least 2 years. Really? It ain't got to be that hard. It's the attitude. We're probably making it worse than it has to be. And we're going to talk about that today. So how y'all doing out there? So that's what we're going to talk about. So let me tell you how I kind of do it. Just to kind of prep you, get you ready. First thing you want to do is really check yourself because you have to really understand what's your purpose for having a conversation. Because sometimes it's not warranted. You know what I mean? Like if the investment is not there when it's like a sporadic thing that you may see. I mean, you may not want to do that, right? But you have to make that decision. But when you do, what's your ideal outcome? What is it that we're looking to accomplish by having that crucial conversation, that difficult conversation that we know we need to have? So that's one of the things that I think about. You may go into it thinking, okay, well, my position is right. I'm being honorable, but we really need to really do a search of that because depending on what you identify as your goal, if you go into it like, you know what, I need to check them, don't do that. just let that simmer, figure that one out. Don't do that. Let's not go in checking people. Let's not go in with checks and balances. Let's not. You have to check your attitude about it, because ultimately what I'm saying when you go into difficult conversations is that you have the most control and power over yourself. And depending on your attitude and what you are looking to accomplish when you go into it is going to really determine how you proceed. So, I think that's something that we all have to do. That's one of the things that I do. Also, what assumptions do you have going into it about the person's intentions? Right? Like we may have been like, well, they did this or they did that. We done told ourselves a story and gave us this thing a narrative. Be open to maybe it's not the case. So be open to, I'm going to be open-minded about what their intention might have been. I'm going to clear the board on what I believe the intention was. Okay. And then make sure we are cautious about assuming what their intention was, because sometimes, the impact doesn't necessarily equal actually the intent. Like the way we took it may not have been the person's intent is basically what I'm saying. What buttons are being pushed and what buttons are you going to push? Make up in your mind, like where you are before you go into that conversation, because I think one of the things that we may have to understand is that depending on where we are and how the conflict or the difficult conversation, what took place prior for it to happen, it may be a trigger for you. And if you know that it is, something that's triggering for you, you might want to be aware of that. And if this is a person that, is this thing that they do that triggers you, and you might want to get up a game plan for how to identify that, because that triggers your trigger, right? And so you will have to really be mindful of what space you're in prior to going into it, and also determine if you're a little bit more emotional than you would normally be about a situation because of the trigger. And I would just suggest to kind of, figure out a neutral way in which you can engage that, a neutral ground, a neutral place, a neutral everything. Because otherwise, I just think it makes that conversation a little bit more challenging. So that's something to think about. Also, like your attitude about it. Like, have you ever been like, I gotta talk to this person, I gotta see them. And I don't think, we got to be honest, we probably role play some of the things that we might want to say, right? Or we role play basically because maybe we know this person. So we kind of almost have this idea match in our head about who's going to say what and how it's going to go and what your counteract is going to be. I'm going to challenge you to say, you know what, let that go. You know what I mean? Just do your best to have a attitude of, you know what, I'm looking forward to, to squash it. You may not even be getting an understanding and or be clear about what your intentions is, So that's just a few things to think about prior to the conversation. So, and the other and last thing is, how have you contributed? Did you contribute to anything, even unknowingly, even if it was, harmless? We have to be open to inventory our actions and our beliefs and the things that we do, and be willing to be like, you know what, I can see that how that might have been taken that way. So be open-minded to that. I think it helps, with not placing the blame all in the other person's court. You know what I mean? Because we wouldn't want it done to us. So we got to figure out a balance with that. Just a suggestion. So here are some of the 4 steps I'm going to tell you about. First one, inquire. Huge, because it gives the opportunity for us to cultivate an environment of, curiosity, so we're not necessarily going in with you statements. Maybe we're going in with I statements. Okay. I, perceive, this thing, and, I thought this may be going on. Was that the case? I saw that this might have been happening. Was that the case? Did this, any of those things, asking questions, the why behind the what, and being very careful about the why, because we don't want to seem like we're like, being accusatory toward anyone, but we definitely want to take that approach. So I would say start with the attitude of inquiry, find out what's been going on with them, because sometimes the situation that became a difficult thing that, came before the conversation might have been something going on in their life, and then something took place that transpired between you and the person, and it really had nothing to do with you per se in that situation. And so other things in their life might have been going on, and it kind of exacerbated that, the issue, the blow up, the misunderstanding, or whatever the case may be. And I think that goes a long way in, kind of diffusing things, because you give the person an opportunity, if they're willing and want to share, that, man, I had stuff going on in my life. So one time I had a friend, a good close friend of mine, and they just kind of dropped off. We would communicate from time to time. And what I know about the person is they real matter of fact and no nonsense. So, I was thinking, oh man, you know what I mean? Like, do I say something? Do I reach out? And, like, did I do something? Did I not do something? And we eventually ended up connecting, and come to find out they were just keeping their head down, hustling, and they were trying to just get money, and they were, getting ready to purchase a home. So that's a process for many of us who have purchased a home. In addition to that, their friend was murdered. The day they spoke to that person earlier that day, and by that evening, that person was murdered. And that, really hit home for them. And so you never know how, or, what's going on in people's lives and how it's affecting them. So that's the reason why I said it's a good idea to start with, an inquiry, and then be listening to what they're not saying, because sometimes people are communicating that they're hurt or that they were fearful, and then they're not going to use those words. So maybe be, up to looking to hear those things, or, something to that degree. So that's huge. And another thing is, once you inquire and the conversation has started, you're asking questions. So at this point, you're looking for the person to give you more information. Listen, like, don't cut them off. Let them express their thought fully. And the only, remark we would be making is to show that we are listening and understand. We're confirming that we hear them. So that's important with the inquiry, waiting for the actual answer to take place and not cutting people off, because that makes things escalate a whole lot further. I don't know if you all experienced that. I have. It depends on the relationship. I'm good for that. So got to work on that. Acknowledgement, huge. Let me tell y'all something. Acknowledgement means that you show them that they're heard and that you understand. It doesn't mean that you agree. It doesn't mean that you agree. You don't have to agree. So acknowledgement is just really to say, I hear you. And to take that a step further, I would be like, you know what? After they complete what they're saying and you acknowledge it, a good way to take it a step further is to say, okay, what I heard you say was X, Y, and Z. Because that has happened to me if I have said something and I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, and they're like, oh, so I don't do nothing right. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. But do you do anything right though? I'm just playing. I'm just playing. That's really extreme. But you get my point. You definitely want to make sure that you honor their position. Nobody wants to be invalidated. Feelings are not right or wrong. People's feelings are their feelings, and they are valid because they are theirs. Let me tell you, a lot of people go wrong in these conversations. Conversation is arguing with people about their feelings. Let me tell you, y'all will take 10 years and add it to your life if we can get the concept of let these people feel what they feel. Whether it's valid to you or not doesn't even matter. Let them feel what they feel and just stand with that. You honor that and stand with that. I'm telling you, you can take the wind out of a sail. Sometimes when I'm caught in the conversation and something is going on, one of the things that I would do in terms of acknowledgement to, not become defensive is I'll say, because you have to recognize that. And so a part of an acknowledging is acknowledging when you may be becoming defensive, and that person may also be becoming defensive. And there's a way to get that to cool without being aggressive, right? So one of the things that I might try is, you know what? Right now, I'm the story that I'm telling myself is that you're like extremely upset and you're angry because it feels like you're yelling. And they might say, well, no, I'm not trying to yell. I'm just passionate and, I'm just worked up. And then, we can get it back down to something more manageable that's comfortable for the both of, people. And let me tell you, when you're in the midst of that, it's very difficult. But I will say this, it's practice. It's an art. It's a skill that's acquired at some point. Just keep doing it. But just let you know, we may become defensive. It's normal. We're human. It is what it is. And we could be grown up and say just what I said. Hey, I don't know if I like your tone right now. I'm kind of feeling like a little defensive. It's a way to go about doing that without just throwing drinks. Please don't do that. Don't do that. I'd rather you storm off before you throw a drink. Besides, depends on what kind of drink it is. I'm just playing. Don't do that. All right. I think one of the things that is important about acknowledgement is respect. So make sure that you are showing respect. I think that one of the things you can say if it becomes a little, heightened and people are feeling passionate is you can say something like, I can see this is very important to you. I have also found that will take the wind out of the sail as well. And then that'll allow for the other person, to see that you do acknowledge that this may be something that, hit them and you want to acknowledge that it is important to them. So to me, it's rooted in respect, but, you get my drift. Okay. The third thing would be advocacy. Okay. Advocacy. So when you have sensed that they have expressed all of it is that, they wanted to say, and they've used all of their energy to discuss what they needed to do about the topic, and it's now your turn. A good way to kind of start that is you can see it from their perception. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you acknowledge, whatever it is that they said for the short term. So you don't, just negate everything that they say. Yeah, I hear you when you said X, Y, and Z. I hear you and I understand why that could have been that. And my position is, blah, 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 and then that way there's a level of advocacy for that person's voice, for their agency. There's respect and there's acknowledgement, but there's also a piece of you that's saying, okay, I hear what you said. I hear that. And this is my understanding, or this is what I feel too. And then you don't have to diminish where you're coming from, because again, a lot of times it's really not about right or wrong when it comes down to that. It's really about the person's, perspective and how they like the lens and the filter in which they view things, and then how, things sit with them and their personality, their idiosyncrasies, and all these things we don't have control over. So it's really counterproductive to just shoot down what somebody says. And let me tell you, I'll be the first one to say, like, when you're in the heat of the moment, that is a hard practice, which is the reason why it's okay to be like, you know what, we're gonna have us a cue word, time out. I had a friend that would say something in Islamic or whatever the case may be, whatever it needs to be, do that until you get to a point where you can work your way through it, because we're human, so that's just what it is. Let me give you an example. And this can be done without minimizing what it is that they just said. So you can say, for example, from what you told me, I can see how you came to this conclusion about blah, blah, blah. Okay. I didn't mean, or it wasn't my intention for that, the blah, blah, blah. Can I talk to you about how to address these issues so that my intention is clear? You know what I mean? So then there's this advocacy that takes place, and you don't have to diminish where you're coming from. Now, here's the thing. If at any point do you feel that it may need to be an apology because you know yourself, because I know myself, and I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, I was dead to the wrong. I'll do that. I don't mind apologizing. I don't enjoy it. It's like not on my to-do list in the morning. But being that I'm very self-aware at this point, and I want to be mature. And when you love people, you care about them, you want to make sure that you do apologize, and then try to make it where you don't keep doing the same thing, and that's just practice. And then the last thing is the fourth step is problem solving, or moving forward, how are we going to do this? You know what I mean? Because then you have an idea of how to, prevent that particular problem from happening again. You can brainstorm about, things that could prevent that from happening, if at all possible, depending on the relationship, business, friend, family, whatever the case may be. Ask them what they think would work. In personal relationships, it comes a time where we have to be like, listen, I know we keep hitting this bump in the road with this, and then we have this huge issue, and then we have to have this difficult conversation. So what is it that we need to do to move forward beyond this, and then try to be proactive about getting to this space where we have to have this difficult conversation because this thing is, continuing to happen. That's not a bad thing to do, and also moving forward. Some people may be like, listen, moving forward, I don't like when you X, Y, and Z do this. This makes me feel unsafe. This makes me, this, and you have to be willing to honor that, because you might want to do the same and say, well, okay, but can you give me a minute before I walk in the house? And you go darting like, you got to work it out. That's relations and, relationships. So we're going to have these difficult conversations, and let's just try to figure out the best way to do it. And when you screw it up, just keep practicing, because you will disagree again. Hopefully not too much, right? I think that one of the things that we have to pay attention to is that, it's a huge amount of the success of an outcome of this is going to depend on where you are, how you are, and what you say. And that's the reason why in the beginning I was saying about how you are has a lot to do with, what you're going to say. So again, the four things are inquiry, acknowledgement, advocacy, and problem solving. Moving forward, how we're going to do this, moving forward. Okay. I'm going to put some tips down there and after the, afterwards, to kind of tell you a few other different things, and then also how to start those difficult conversations with somebody, like a preamble, like a prompt. I'm going to put those in there. Maybe they'll be useful to you. I don't know. You let me know. So let me see what y'all talking about up here. Hey, Jill, Dave, thank you. I appreciate that. Jill says, thank you for always empowering us. Marissa, blessings. I try. It is not my goal to be spewing out hatred and stuff. It's just really it's so much energy. It's so much energy. Honestly, I don't see how some of you guys do it. This is a lot of energy. So I am hoping, hey, Lindsay, thank you for tuning in, sweetie. High school friends. Let's see here. Hey, James, I'm glad you're here. All right, this is true. Committed to the story and not open to the truth. That'll ruin some stuff in a heartbeat, won't it? It definitely will. You have to also be willing to acknowledge emotional energy, yours and theirs, and direct it towards a useful purpose. I think that's what basically Lindsay is saying. If you go into a situation, I remember one time, y'all, let me tell you about this one time. And it's only because I love this person. So like my bestie, like the one time he was like, and it was just really, we're just different people, but we are like peanut butter and jelly. Okay. That is my bestie. And I remember just being so angry, but it's about something that was, she was like, oh, so I'm like, okay, whatever. And I was like, I can't talk right now. I need a minute. A minute turned into like 2-3 weeks. I had to get it together. It was a couple years ago, right? And then we went to dinner and I was still so angry. And it wasn't that I was angry as much as I was hurt, but thank God she's like a super, very patient and compassionate. She loves me, but also, a very spiritual, godly woman that she could see, where that was coming from because she knows me. I have since then been able to handle things a whole lot better. I was really coming out of my situation, you guys, and there was a lot going on. But you also have to be able to acknowledge when there's emotional energy and like the best way to not set yourself up a narrative that will take you down a path that'll make you not be able to communicate that for 3 weeks. So just know that. And if it gets to that point, know and return to the truth or the purpose. You know what I mean? And don't get stuck in the difficult moment. You know what I mean? I think I have a friend that's like good for switching the subject. And I'd be like, no, this ain't resolved. And if you're one of those people that, feel like it's got to be some level of resolution, let the pause happen and be like, can we table this for later? Because it may give you some time to think through it too. Just a thought. And let me tell you something else. Let me say this, try not to take verbal attacks personally. It's a lot of the times it's not about you. And I'm praying that respect is in the center of that so that they won't personally attack you. I have seen where young adults, teenagers and things like that will test you with those things. And a lot of the times it's not a personal thing. They are literally learning how to be able to put language to what it is that they need to communicate that's bothering them. And if teenagers and young people have a problem or are still learning that, you could imagine some of the adults that we've come across that really have a hard time with being able to do that. And you also have to determine like if this conversation needs to have and if it's worth the investment. I have people in my life that I am invested with and I want to have those conversations. And I can tell you there's been times when there's been disagreements with people and I'm like, well, I don't know that I care, and it's not to be harmful toward anybody. It's just that sometimes it's just the position that we're in. We're individual people. We have different experience. We are kind of in our own thing. There's really no need to have, a kumbaya moment. If that's, like I have a blue moon, I'll see you. It's like, what's up? You know what I mean? It just depends. I think you'll make that assessment. You know you people, right? And lastly, don't assume that people can see things from your point of view. It's your point of view. Your point of view. That's like me giving you my glasses and be like, hey, you can't see that stop sign? Maybe you don't need the glasses. Maybe my prescription is way too strong. Maybe it's not strong enough. But the point of the matter is, sometimes you're going to have to agree to disagree too, and that's okay. That's okay. We got to be able to hold on to multiple truths at the time. It doesn't have to end with you right or you wrong, especially when it's a point of view, feelings and emotions. They are valid. I don't think they're wrong. Maybe like, I wouldn't feel that way. Like, okay, weird, but don't mean that they're wrong. You know what I mean? You just got to let people have that. I promise you that at 10 years of your life, you're like, oh, okay. That's how you feel. I hear you. Respect that. Boop, gone. You ain't got no more issues. I'm telling you, it might work. So practice with a friend. If you got a conversation you need to have coming up, practice with a friend. Get that out of the way. Hey, Steffi, been missing your videos and notifications. Good evening. Hi. Thank you for coming on, Steffi. I appreciate it. Share this with somebody. Guarantee you somebody need to have a difficult conversation and they being passive aggressive. Those people are kind of funny to me. Like, how you a whole 40 years old and you being passive aggressive and breathing like you a teenager in my house? Stop it. Okay. So I appreciate you all joining me. Thank you for hanging out. Please go up to marissaalexander.com to sign up for a subscription to my email. Where I'll be sharing different information with you about my upcoming book and other projects, and you'll get those first. And enjoy your Wednesday. Oh, I'm looking forward to the Lakers and the Warriors game tonight. Oh, I'm so glad I got this over at 7. So I'm looking forward to that. I like sports. But y'all take care of yourself and take care of one another. All right. Peace out.